Welcome to A Comic a Day, and this month we are celebrating the birth month of my favorite comic book company, Aftershock Comics. They turned 2 this year, and my god has it been an absolutely brilliant 2 years since. But you'll see what I mean this month. As always, links to buy these comics are in the description, and become a patron to help support the Comic Archivist family of channels. Warning, massive spoilers are massive this month. On with the show. Second Sight number 2. We open with John helping Ray set up Skype, with a pretty inventive username, Sunbeam Wayfarer. Get it, cause his name is Ray Pilgrim? I mean, it is better than like Manta Monk or something. Side note, I may have just made the next great indie superhero with that joke. No matter, Ray starts a video call with Tony. Apparently the news puppets left a couple days prior, but Tony brings up that may change again, since she found one of the Wednesday Club's victims. Carl Byrne, who even after 25 years is still very messed up about it. But even bigger than that, Carl got Tony in contact with Millicent Canning, the woman who may or may not have been supplying the children for the sick club games. However, Millicent called Tony and said that she was ready to give up all of her information, but when Carl got there, Millicent had OD'd, though Carl brings up that she wasn't a user. Then we cut to Millicent's apartment as the police arrive, with Detective Sergeant Janice Temple bringing up that considering who she is, they really need to treat Millicent's death as suspicious, and they search to see if she had any of the evidence Canning claimed to have. But that is until we follow Tony and Ray to Mrs. Warren, Carl's mother, who gave him up when he was very young since she was in a really bad place. Carl came to her one day shaken. He had confronted Millicent, who confessed everything to him before giving him photos of kids, including Carl, during one of the Wednesday Club's party. Mrs. Warren begs Ray to use his sight to find her son, so Ray gets a recent photo and his favorite shirt, and they then leave her house. Back at Ray's apartment, they look over the photos, but there's not enough to identify really anyone, and the kids are not being abused in the photos. But Tony then asks if Ray could do it again, the remote viewing. Ray says that it's been 20 years, and it only ever happened with Al the Chemist's special mushrooms. But even then, he promised Tony when she wasn't even born yet, and promised himself that he wouldn't. It messed him up really bad. Which then leads Tony to asking him to continue his story about what did happen 20 years ago. So he tells her about how the day after he was arrested, he did get let go since there was a dozen people who saw him passed out during the party, but was still a suspect from Detective Callahan, the lead investigator on the Pig serial killer. A couple weeks later, Callahan comes to the place that Ray and his friends are squatting at to tell him that a 6-year-old girl was kidnapped by the Pig. He needs Ray to do whatever he did last time and find the girl. So Ray gets more shrooms from Al, and he saw it all, from the girl's eyes and then the serial killer's eyes. But he couldn't stop the death of the little girl, and was barely able to get to the phone to tell Callahan that the Pig sent her parents a gift of her dead in a box on her doorstep. Yet Ray did remember enough details to tell the police where the workshop was, so they did actually catch the Pig. Yet the story gets interrupted again, this time by Tony's mom calling her on her cell phone, so Tony has to go. When Ray walks Tony out, in the alley by his shop, Al the Chemist has a bag of shrooms for him, even though Ray hadn't gotten to talk to him in 2 decades. You know, I want to say that was creepy, but I had a friend who had his own routine down so well that he knew exactly every time his clientele was running low. But then again, I doubt over 2 decades he'd still be up to that. So yeah, chalk it up to creepy. Ray goes into his apartment and doses himself, yet he sits and waits without anything happening, save for a splitting headache. At least until Tony calls to ask if anything happened, when suddenly he's standing in his flooded apartment with who I would assume is Carl tied up crucifixion style to his wall. Nice way to leave us off in this issue, honestly. Now, I won't get into the giant breakdown I got into in the first issue, mainly because this issue focuses primarily on the investigation into the Wednesday Club and everything like that, as well as introducing us to the police, who are semi on the case after the death of the woman that supplied the kids. On the investigation front, I actually do like how it lays out. It doesn't come off as a compiling of the clues for some big reveal later on, though I wouldn't be surprised if Superintendent Deacon was a member of the Wednesday Club, just because he's a high-ranking, prominent official, but it's a thriller, so we as the audience follow the investigation as it builds, which if the first issue was setting up the characters, scenario, and basically all of what I talked about last time, then this was a proper way to not let the plot slip away and become secondary to the drug trips and general drama of the cast. Actually, something that was pretty nifty, or I could see people just going, wow, really? Depending on how it's handled in later issues, would be Al the Chemist, which I'm actually surprised that name has not been used for a drug dealing weirdo before, just popping up to go, here's your drugs, without without ever being asked, but then again, that has to be explored later. I mean, something that kind of unsettlingly, surrealistly weird has to be answered, right? Well, who knows when or if that'll actually be solved, but tomorrow, now that the drugs have kicked in, let's see what tomorrow's issue brings us. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. Check out my other two channels, Comic Archivist and ComicSins. Become a patron to get to choose the next comics we do for a comic a day, and as always, stay golden, Inklings!
Psycho killer on the loose again, demented brain in constant pain.